Thought for a few seconds. Maria woke up that morning with a flutter in her chest. Today was the day of the company's end-of-year party, and she had looked forward to it for weeks. She dressed carefully in a bright blue dress that made her feel both festive and professional. As she smoothed her hair in the mirror, she thought about all the hard work she and her teammates had done over the past year. They had launched new campaigns, fixed tricky problems, and stayed late more than once to meet deadlines. Tonight felt like the reward for all those late nights and long meetings. In the kitchen, Maria's roommate Claire greeted her with a plate of pancakes and fresh fruit. Claire knew how much Maria cared about her job, so she had set the table with extra care. They chatted about the party menu. Claire had heard there would be mini quiches, shrimp cocktail, and even a chocolate fountain. Maria laughed at the thought of dipping marshmallows into warm chocolate. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Parties were not her favorite thing, but she also loved seeing her coworkers outside the office glow of computer screens. After breakfast, Maria took a moment by the window to gather her confidence. She stared at the city skyline, tall buildings shining in the morning sun. She remembered the day she had joined the company as an intern. She had been nervous then. 2. Over time, she had made friends in the marketing team, and they had learned each other's jokes and habits. She thought of Lisa, who always hummed the same song when she worked, and of Andre, who greeted everyone with a warm good morning. Maria felt proud of how far she had come. She grabbed her purse and double-checked that she had her invitation and a small gift voucher her team had put together as a prize for best holiday sweater. She smiled at the thought of her colleagues' colorful, silly sweaters. Some had lights sewn on. Others had tiny bells that jingled with every move. Though invitation had instructions to arrive at 7 in the evening at a nearby banquet hall. A shuttle bus would pick them up at the office lobby. Maria made sure her phone was charged, packed an extra lipstick, and headed out the door. The shuttle ride gave Maria time to think about what tonight might bring. She overheard other employees in the bus corridor talking about work gossip and holiday plans. Some were excited to meet their partners' families. Others hoped to get a good raffle prize. Maria listened to their conversations and smiled at their enthusiasm. She felt like part of something larger, a team that cared about each other beyond simple office tasks. When the bus doors opened at the hall, she took a deep breath and stepped into the festive lights. Inside the hall was decorated with twinkling lights, tall centerpieces of evergreen branches and red ribbons. A soft melody played in the background, jazz versions of holiday classics. Maria's heart lifted. She handed her invitation to the greeter, who smiled and motioned her inside. Ahead, she saw a round table set with elegant plates and glasses, and a stage with a microphone. Everyone she passed greeted her with a friendly "Hi, Maria," or "Nice to see you." She waved back, her face warm with happiness. A group from her department waved her over. They had saved a seat for her at their table next to the stage. She sat between Sarah, who worked in social media, and Tom, a graphic designer. They chatted about their favorite dishes and what they hoped Santa would bring them. Tom teased Sarah about her elaborate gift wrapping, and Sarah laughed, nudging him with her elbow. Maria relaxed into their easy banter, enjoying the feeling of belonging. As the appetizers arrived, tiny bruschetta and cheese platters, Maria took a moment to look around. She saw her boss, Mr. Patel, shaking hands with everyone and thanking them for their work. He seemed genuine and kind, a man who often brought coffee for the team on busy mornings. She admired how he listened during meetings and gave credit when projects succeeded. Then her eyes found Daniel Harris, the manager of another department. He stood alone by the refreshment table, arms folded. His expression was tight, almost angry. Maria's stomach tightened. She had worked with Daniel on one cross-team project last spring. He had not been friendly then, but she blamed it on stress. She decided not to worry. Her phone buzzed. Text from her friend Miguel read, "See you soon. I'm wearing the ugliest sweater, won't miss it." She smiled and texted back, "Can't wait." A few minutes later, Miguel arrived, grinning in a red sweater covered in snowflakes and tiny blinking lights. Maria introduced him to Sarah and Tom, and the group grew louder with laughter as they admired Miguel's sweater. The mood was light and joyful. Just then, an announcement came over the speaker. "Welcome everyone to our 2025 annual holiday celebration. We are thrilled to have you here." The crowd applauded, and Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. She looked forward to the speeches, the games, and maybe even a chance to dance. The smell of roast chicken and garlic potatoes filled the air. She took a small plate of food, offering some to Sarah, who leaned over to taste the potatoes. Maria reached for a glass of sparkling cider. She raised her glass in a quiet toast to positive memories and good friends. As she sipped, she scanned the room. Most people were smiling and talking. Some photographed their plates. Others took selfies. Near the decorated fireplace, she felt safe and happy. This was the night she had pictured when late nights at her desk seemed endless. Here, she could let go of deadlines and simply enjoy the company of people who cared about more than just work. A soft song began one of her favorites. A couple of colleagues stood up and invited everyone to the dance floor. Maria felt a gentle tug of excitement and hesitated. Dancing was not something she did often, but she wanted to join in. Sarah gave her hand and said, "Come on, you'll have fun." Maria smiled and let herself be led into the center of the room as they moved. To the rhythm, she laughed at how silly she looked. Miguel joined them, making playful moves. For a moment, the world felt light, and Maria forgot any worries. Then, she spotted Daniel standing at the edge of the lights. His lips moved in what looked like a curse. His arms were crossed. Heat rushed to Maria's cheeks. He was thinking, but the music changed to a faster beat, and Sarah spun her around, shouting, "Don't mind him, just dance." Maria nodded and raised her arms, letting the music carry her. She felt the laughter bubble up, and she shook her hips, forgetting everything but the moment. Inside that dance circle, under glittering lights and smiling faces, Maria felt joy and relief. She believed tonight was hers to enjoy. She believed she belonged. She believed that this year her hard work had earned her a place among friends and colleagues. And for the first time, she felt truly part of the team she loved. The music pulsed through the air as Maria moved with her friends, laughter bubbling up with every beat. She felt the warmth of the lights dancing over her skin, the softness of the bass vibrating through her shoes. Around her, coworkers clapped, in time, and called out encouragement. She spun in a circle, her blue dress swirling like a calm wave. In that moment, she felt free, like nothing could touch her good mood. Sarah leaned in, her voice joyful above the music. "You look amazing. Maria, I'm so glad you decided to dance." Maria smiled at her friend's bright face, her heart light. She laughed and let Sarah lead her into a series of playful steps. Miguel joined, tipping an imaginary hat. Tom, who had been watching from the edge, stepped forward with a goofy bow. Soon, the small group formed a circle, their feet moving in time, their hands clapping. As they danced, more people joined. The circle grew tight with smiling faces. Maria recognized Anna from accounting, who bobbed her head and winked. She saw James from it doing a funny hip shake that made everyone giggle. Maria felt proud to be surrounded by these friendly faces. The holiday party, she thought, was exactly what she needed after long months of deadlines and late nights. Suddenly, the music shifted, slowing down into a softer, more soulful tune. Couples paired off, swaying side by side. Maria felt a gentle hand on her elbow. She turned to find her boyfriend, Marcus, smiling. He held out his hand. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice warm. Maria's heart fluttered. She took his hand, stepping into his arms. As they swayed beneath the glowing lights, she felt safe and loved. For a moment, she forgot everything but Marcus's steady heartbeat and the soft glow of the decorations. But then she saw him, Daniel Harris, standing just beyond the edge of the dance floor. His arms were crossed and his face was drawn tight. His eyes stayed fixed on Maria. It felt like a cold wind had blown through the warm room. Maria's breath caught. She pulled back slightly from Marcus and tried to smile at him, to reassure herself she was overthinking. Marcus noticed her hesitation. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern flickering in his eyes. Maria nodded, but didn't smile. I'm fine," she said softly. She didn't want to ruin the moment, but the tension in Daniel's stare made her uneasy. She leaned into Marcus, and they continued to dance, but her steps felt heavy, as if someone pressed down on her chest. Before she could think further, Daniel moved. He stepped into the circle of dancers, pushing through the crowd with an angry look. The music faded slightly under the sudden hush. Maria's friends noticed and paused. Sarah frowned, and Tom shifted his weight. "What's wrong?" Sarah whispered, reaching for Maria's hand. But Daniel didn't speak to Sarah's gaze. Was locked on Maria. "Get out," he said, his voice sharp. It cut through the soft music like ice. People gasped. Few stopped to stare. Maria froze. She didn't understand. She looked at Daniel, her mouth open. "What do you mean?" she managed, her voice trembling. Daniel stepped closer, bending his head so he could talk right into her ear. "You don't belong here," he hissed. "This party is not for you." Maria felt her face burn. She tightened her grip on Marcus's hand and took a small step back, but Daniel followed. "You," he snapped louder. "Get out now." The word felt like a slap. Hurt and confusion swirled inside Maria. She looked around, hoping someone would step in. But the circle of dancers had parted, leaving only empty space between her and Daniel. Daniel, please," Marcus said, stepping forward. "She's allowed." But Daniel ignored him, turned fully to Maria. "I'm the manager here. I decide who stays." His hand gestured roughly toward the exit. "You leave." Now, a low murmur rose from the crowd. Sarah stepped up beside Marcus. "This is wrong," she said firmly. "Maria isn't doing anything." Daniel glared at Sarah as if she were the one causing trouble. "You too," he snapped. "All of you," he pointed at Maria's friends. "Back off." Maria's breath came in short gasps. She felt tears welling up. She wanted to scream that she had done nothing wrong. She wanted to shout at Daniel for humiliating her. But the sound stuck in her throat. She felt every eye in the room watching. Some faces showed shock. Others looked uncomfortable, glancing away when Daniel's eyes met theirs. Marcus wrapped an arm around Maria, pulling her gently out of the circle. "It's okay," he whispered. "Let's go." Maria wanted to resist, to stay and fight. But Daniel's fury felt too big. She felt small and alone. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She let Marcus guide her toward the door. As they passed other tables, whispers followed them. What happened? Why is she leaving? Someone touched Maria's shoulder in sympathy. She leaned into the gesture and kept moving. The heavy swing of the exit door felt like a thunderclap. Maria stepped into the cool night air, gasping as cold air met her warm tears. Marcus closed the door behind them. Maria slid down against the wall, her back to the door. She wrapped her arms around herself and let the tears come. The sky was dark, dotted with soft city lights. A shuttle bus idled nearby, its engine ticking quietly. The sound felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else's life. Marcus knelt beside her. "So sorry," he said, voice full of regret. "It should never have happened." But his words felt small. The pain inside Maria felt too big for any apology. She wiped her cheeks roughly on the sleeve of her dress. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I did nothing wrong." "Of course you didn't," Marcus said, his eyes angry now. He was out of line. He held her hand, rubbing soft circles with his thumb. "You should call HR. You should tell someone." Maria looked up at him, her eyes red. "I can't believe he said those things," she whispered. "I can't believe he used words like that." She drew in a shaky breath. She wanted to go. Back inside, to stand up for herself. But the memory of those cold, hateful eyes made her head spin. "I'm so embarrassed," she said. "I feel like everyone saw me leave because I wasn't, because I'm not." She stopped, unable to finish. The unspoken words hung between them. "Because I'm black." Marcus squeezed her hand. "You are strong," he said, "but you don't have to face this alone." Maria took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She thought of Sarah, and Tom and Miguel, all of them, her friends, who had been inside with her moments ago. She thought of the supportive faces, the ones who had clapped and cheered. She thought of her boss, Mr. Patel, who had spoken kindly just before. She wondered if he would believe her. She wondered if he even knew what Daniel had done. "I want to go back in," she said quietly. I want to tell Mr. Patel. I want to show them I'm not the problem. She rose slowly, brushing grass from her dress. Will you go with me? Marcus stood, pulling her into a gentle hug. Always, he said. Maria let the tears come again as he held her. She felt a mix of fear and fierce determination. She would face what happened and seek justice. She would speak the truth. After a long moment, she let go of Marcus and straightened her shoulders. She brushed her hair back from her face. Okay, she said. Let's go. She squared her chin, lifted her chest, and walked toward the door. Marcus followed, his hand on her back, guiding but not pushing. Maria took a deep breath as they entered the hall again. The soft jazz music had resumed. People looked up, startled by their return. Some eyes widened, others turned away quickly. Daniel stood near the refreshment table, his face hard. Maria and his eyes narrowed. Maria felt her heart pound. She kept her gaze forward and walked past the tables. She saw the stage where the host was preparing to announce the next event. Mr. Patel stood at the edge of the stage, chatting with a small group. Maria drew closer, her steps measured. She cleared her throat softly. Mr. Patel turned and saw her. Maria, said surprise in his voice. He glanced at the letter in her hand and the tears on her cheeks. What's wrong? Maria lifted her head and took a steadying breath. Her voice was quiet but clear. Mr. Patel, Daniel told me to leave, she said. He said I don't belong here. She paused, her eyes flicking to Daniel, who shifted uncomfortably. I want you to know what happened. Mr. Patel's expression changed from surprise to concern. He stepped closer. Of course. Let's talk in the conference room. He gently guided her away from the crowd. Marcus and Sarah joined them, offering support. Tom hovered nearby, his face grim. Inside the quiet room, Maria told her story. Again, every detail of Daniel's words, the way he had spoken to her, the bitter humiliation she felt. She showed the notes she and Sarah had recorded on her phone. She pointed out the shocked looks of her friends when they saw her leave. Mr. Patel listened without interruption, his brow furrowed. When she finished, Mr. Patel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. I'm so sorry, he said at last. This behavior is unacceptable. Promise you we will take action. Maria nodded, relief and hope mingling in her chest. She had spoken her truth. She had faced her fear. Now, she would wait to see if the company stood up for her or if her fight had only just begun. Maria felt a hollow kind of relief after speaking with Mr. Patel. She and her friends left the small conference room, her steps light but cautious. Sarah slipped her arm through Maria's. Tom walked beside Marcus, and Miguel hovered close behind. Outside, the bright lights of the hall felt less cheerful now. The music in the main room sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else's party. Mr. Patel watched them with concern as they rejoined the others. He nodded at Maria, promising with his eyes that he would act. Maria gave a small, grateful smile. She felt safer knowing someone in power cared. Still, her heart fluttered with worry. What if Daniel denied everything? What if the company tried to protect him instead of her? Sarah squeezed Maria's hand. You did great, she whispered. Maria nodded, but her chest felt tight. She felt a mix of pride and fear. She had stood up for herself, but now the real fight would begin. They returned to their table, and the group had fallen quiet, and the earlier laughter had faded. Coats and purses cluttered the chairs. Servers had cleared the plates, and the plates of dessert sat untouched. People whispered among themselves. When Maria and her friends sat, Sarah caught the eye of Lisa from accounting. Lisa gave a small, encouraging nod. Maria remembered Lisa's wink earlier on the dance floor.
Hey.
She felt a spark of hope. Tom leaned. In, we'll back you up, he said quietly. Maria's throat tightened. She was grateful for their support, but she felt bad for dragging them into this mess. They had come to celebrate and ended up in the middle of a conflict that had nothing to do with them. Miguel pulled out his phone. I recorded the moment he told you to leave, he said. He showed Maria the video. It was shaky, but Daniel's words were clear. You don't belong here. Leave. The crowd around them watched Maria slide out of the circle and disappear through the door. Maria's heart pounded as she watched it. Seeing it again made her relive the shock and pain. Yet now she knew she had proof. What about the others? Maria asked. Anna, James, anyone else record or see? Sarah tapped her phone. I texted Anna right away. She said she'd write a note, and James told me he'd witnessed it. He felt awful but didn't know what to do at the moment. Maria felt tears prick her eyes again. The kindness of people made her feel less alone. She realized she had allies. At that moment, the music stopped altogether. A quiet hush fell over the hall. The host took the stage and spoke into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an important announcement. Maria and her friends shared nervous glances. The host smiled, but his eyes flicked toward Maria's direction. Maria felt her pulse quicken. She wondered if this was about her. The host spoke of raffle prizes and games, but his voice sounded far away. Maria's mind raced. The part of her wanted to leave right away and head home. Another part wanted to stay and see justice done. She looked at Sarah. Sarah shrugged slightly as if to say, let's wait. Maria nodded. She would wait. They rose as a group, moving closer to the refreshment table. The servers offered small bites of cake and tiny cups of coffee. Maria took a cup, the warmth grounding her. She sipped slowly, feeling the heat melt the tension in her chest. She reminded herself she had done the right thing by going back and telling Mr. Patel. Meanwhile, Daniel stood in a small circle with two senior managers from another department. He spoke in low tones, his face red with anger, gestured with his hand pointing in Maria's direction. She made a scene. He said she tried to look like the victim. The managers exchanged glances. One of them frowned, but said nothing. Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. Honestly, it's been a big problem with her since she joined. I don't know why Mr. Patel even hired her. Maria saw him. She felt bile rise in her throat, but she held her head high. She had dignity. She would not let him see her shake. She glanced at Mr. Patel, who stood alone near a pillar, watching Daniel carefully. Maria saw Mr. Patel's jaw tighten, took a step toward Daniel, but paused when Daniel lifted his head. Their eyes met. Daniel looked away first, narrowing his eyes at Maria. Maria turned back to her friends. She felt a surge of anger, not just for herself, but for every person who had to face that kind of hate. She reminded herself that this moment could change things. If the company stood behind her, it could send a message that racism would not be tolerated. Marcus reached for her hand. Are you okay? He asked softly. Maria took a breath and nodded. I am, she said. I'm going to see this through. She felt stronger saying it. Marcus smiled, pride in his eyes. The party slowly resumed. Some people cheered for raffle winners, others went back to dancing. Maria and her friends stayed near the table, sipping their drinks and talking quietly. They shared memories of fun times at work, trying to recapture the warm spirit of the night before it had turned cold. After about 15 minutes, Mr. Patel approached them again. He held a small invitation card in his hand. Maria, could you come to my office tomorrow morning at 9? He asked quietly. His voice was steady. I need to complete the report and speak with HR. I want to get all the facts before we decide on the next steps. Maria felt a flicker of hope. Yes, of course, she said. Thank you, sir. She saw him glance at Daniel, who watched from across the room. Mr. Patel turned away and walked off. Maria risked a look back. Daniel's face was impassive. Now, he did not seem surprised. The night wore on. The lights dimmed for a final dance, a slow, sentimental song. Couples moved close. Laughter returned, soft and less urgent. Maria and her group watched from the edge, talking quietly. The earlier tension lingered, but they held each other up. As the last song played, Maria and her friends decided to head. Back to the shuttle. The engines idled in the parking lot. The night air was cold, but Maria felt the heat of her emotions. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She pictured the next morning Mr. Patel's office, the HR team waiting. To hear her story? She pictured herself telling them exactly what happened, showing them the evidence, hearing them promise to act, Sarah slipped an arm around her shoulders. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You did the right thing." Maria leaned into her. Franda nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. They boarded the shuttle in a line, coats in hand. The driver greeted them and pulled away. The lights of the banquet hall faded behind them. Inside the bus, the hum of conversation was soft. Some people chit-chatted about their dinner plans. Others dozed quietly. Maria stared out the window, watching the city lights blur. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, her heart steady. She knew things would not be easy. Daniel might fight back. She might face more humiliation. But she also knew she had allies, friends, witnesses, and a boss who believed her. And she had her own strength. She had faced fear and still spoken up. As the bus drove toward the office building, Maria closed her eyes for a moment. She pictured herself standing strong tomorrow, her voice steady. She pictured the HR room, the faces around the table. She pictured justice being done. When the bus stopped and doors opened, Maria stepped off with her friends beside her. The night air bit at her cheeks, but she felt warm inside. She lifted her chin and walked toward the building. Tonight had tested her. Tomorrow would be a new test. But she was ready. She was determined. And she knew this was just the beginning of a journey toward fairness and respect, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved a chance to belong. ChatGPT said. Maria woke up the next morning with a knot in her stomach. She lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Yesterday's party still felt like a strange dream. One part was joyful dancing with friends, laughing with Marcus. The other part was sharp pain Daniel's cruel words, the cold night air, the shock of being told to leave. Now she had to face the next step. Her meeting with Mr. Patel and HR at 9 o'clock. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and sat quietly, her heart pounding. Maria splashed cold water on her face and looked at herself. In the mirror, the dark circles under her eyes spoke of restless sleep and worry. She straightened her shoulders and said softly to her reflection, "You can do this." Her voice trembled, but she held her gaze. She brushed her hair, chose a simple blouse, and dark trousers clothes that felt both professional and comfortable. She did not want to draw attention to herself, but she also wanted to look strong. At breakfast, Marcus made her toast and scrambled eggs. He spoke gently, asking if she had slept at all. Maria shook her head, sipping her coffee. "I'm nervous," she admitted. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "You have every reason to be," he said, "but you spoke the truth, and you have proof. Mr. Patel will listen." His words felt hopeful, but Maria could not help worrying about what might happen if they did not. By 8:30, she left her apartment. The morning air was cool, and the city streets were busy with people rushing to work. To the lobby of their building, and watched her step into the elevator. When the doors closed, he pressed his forehead against the glass panel and mouthed, "Good luck." Maria gave him a small wave and tried to smile. The elevator rode down, and she pressed the button for the 15th floor of her office. The hallway outside her team's workspace was quiet. Most people had not arrived yet. The lights were low, and computers sat silent on desks. Maria's steps echoed softly. She carried her phone, which held the recordings and messages from the night before. In her bag was a small notebook where she had written down every detail she could remember. She would not leave anything out. At 9 on the dot, she reached Mr. Patel's office door. The nameplate on the glass read Arjun Patel, Marketing. Director underneath was a simple sign, "Please knock." She took a deep breath and knocked. A soft voice said, "Come in." Inside, Mr. Patel stood from behind his desk. He wore a neatly pressed shirt and a calm expression. Behind him sat Ms. Reynolds, an HR manager Maria had met once before during her hiring process. On the other side of the room stood Daniel Harris and another HR representative. "Mr. Lin." Daniel's face looked tense, his jaw tight. He gave no greeting as Maria entered. "Good morning, Maria," Mr. Patel said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "Thank you for coming on time." Maria nodded and sat, placing her bag on the floor beside her. She looked at the two HR staff and then at Daniel. She felt a flicker of fear, but held her head high. "Before we begin," Mr. Patel said, I want to remind everyone that this is a confidential discussion. We need to gather facts and remain professional. He opened a folder on his desk. Maria, would you please tell us, in your own words, what happened at the party last night? Maria took a breath and spoke slowly, clearly. She described the invitation, the dancing, the laughter. She told how Daniel had come over and told her to leave the dance floor, how he had used a hurtful phrase, how she felt humiliated. She explained how she left, called Marcus, then returned to see Mr. Patel. She shared details of the recording Miguel had made and the witness statements in her notebook. As she spoke, Mr. Patel listened without interrupting, nodding sometimes. Ms. Reynolds typed notes on her laptop. Mr. Lin watched Maria carefully, his expression neutral. Daniel shifted on his feet, looking angry. When Maria finished, silence filled the room. Ms. Reynolds closed her laptop with a soft click. "Thank you, Maria," she said. "We appreciate your honesty." Mr. Patel leaned forward. "We will review all the evidence and speak with witnesses. We want fairness." He turned slightly to Daniel. "Daniel, would you like to respond?" Daniel's face was pale. He straightened his tie. "I did not use any improper language," he said in a measured voice. "Maria was dancing with people from her own department. She was causing a disturbance and distracting others. I simply asked her to step aside." Maria felt her chest tighten. She looked at Daniel, then at Mr. Patel. She saw doubt in Mr. Patel's eyes, but she also saw him trying to understand. She cleared her throat. "Excuse me," she said. "You did use a slur. Miguel recorded it." Daniel's eyes flicked to the recording Maria held out. "Let me see that," he said sharply. Maria handed Mr. Patel her phone. Mr. Patel tapped the screen, played the audio. Daniel's voice echoed clearly. "You don't belong here. Go." There was no slur on the recording, only hurtful words. Maria realized she had misremembered. The slur, relief and shame mingled in her chest. Mr. Patel paused the recording. He said, "You don't belong here," Mr. Patel repeated. "Now, that is unacceptable." He looked at Daniel. "Daniel, do you have any witnesses to support your claim of disturbance?" Daniel swallowed. Daniel saw how she reacted. They thought she was making a scene. Mr. Lin spoke up. "We have separate reports from Sarah, Tom, and Anna, all stating that Maria was calm and did not cause any disturbance. We also have the recording." He gestured to Ms. Reynolds, who nodded and pointed to her notes, confirming multiple witness statements. Daniel's face hardened. He turned his gaze to Maria, then back to Mr. Patel. "I still believe her behavior was unprofessional," he said. She interrupted the party with her insistence on dancing. Mr. Patel stood. "This meeting is about bias and unfair treatment. We will investigate further." He looked at Maria. "We will finish this review by tomorrow afternoon." Maria nodded, relieved the meeting was over. She stood and faced Daniel. "Thank you for hearing my side," she said quietly. She walked out, accompanied by Mr. Patel, who promised to keep her updated. In the hallway, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Back at her desk, the day dragged on. Emails and messages arrived, but nothing about the meeting. Daniel avoided eye contact and passed by without a word. The tension was thick. Maria tried to focus on her work, typing slowly, checking campaigns, but her mind wandered back to the meeting. Had she done enough? Would they believe her? Late that afternoon, Ms. Reynolds called her to the HR office again. Maria's heart pounded as she walked down the hall. When she entered, she saw Mr. Lin and Daniel. The desk was clear of papers. Daniel's posture was stiff. "Maria, please sit," Ms. Reynolds said, motioning to the chair. Maria sat, her hands clasped in her lap. "We have completed our initial review," Mr. Lin began. "Several inconsistencies came up. Some witnesses said your return to the party caused confusion. Daniel provided a different account of events." Maria blinked, confused. I thought the witnesses supported me." Mr. Lin sighed. "We have to consider all sides. We also reviewed the party security footage." He paused. "Your return to the dance floor after leaving could be seen as disruptive. The company policy on conduct at company events is clear." Maria felt her chest tighten. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice caught. Daniel leaned forward. "I'm sorry this happened," he said with forced calm. "I believe the company needs to enforce rules fairly. I ask that we terminate Maria's contract for gross misconduct." Maria's eyes widened in shock. "Gross misconduct?" she whispered. "For dancing?" Ms. Reynolds cleared her throat. "Under our policy, causing a disturbance that affects other employees is considered misconduct. We have no choice." She slid a folder across the desk. "Here's your termination letter. Your last day of employment is today." Maria's hands trembled as she picked up the letter. She scanned the words, "Due to breach of conduct and creating disturbances at company event, your employment is terminated effective immediately." Her world blurred. She stared at the letter, unable to believe what she read. I didn't do anything wrong," Maria whispered. "Just wanted to dance." Mr. Lin looked down. "I'm sorry. Maria, this decision is final." Tears blurred Maria's vision. She stood, clutching the letter. "This isn't fair," she said, voice breaking. "I was the one hurt. I was the one told to leave." Daniel rose, avoiding her gaze. "I'm sorry you feel that way." Maria turned and walked out of the room, her head bowed. The hallway stretched before her, empty and cold. She felt numb as she passed cubicles and offices, her office, now empty. She reached for the elevator, her legs unsteady. When she reached the lobby, the building seemed too big and loud. She held the letter tight, as if it were the only thing real in her hands. The security guard gave her a sympathetic look, but said nothing as she stepped outside. The sky was gray, and a light drizzle began. Maria's tear tracks blended with raindrops on her cheeks. She stood on the sidewalk, lost and alone. The city noise felt distant. She opened her bag, took out her phone, and called Marcus. His worried voice came through. "Maria, what happened?" Through her tears, she showed him the letter with the shaking video. Marcus read it, his face crumpling. "They fired you?" he said. "On the spot?" Maria nodded, swallowing hard. "They said I caused a disturbance. They sided with Daniel." Marcus's voice steadied. "I'm so sorry. You did nothing wrong. We'll fight this." Maria closed her eyes. "Lee?" Maria sat in the small conference room of her attorney's office, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The early morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes across the walls. Across the table, her attorney, Mr. Green, nodded as he reviewed her case file. Maria felt a mix of nerves and relief. She had taken the first step toward justice, and now the real work would begin. "I've filed the complaint with the labor board," Mr. Green said. "We'll request a hearing date soon. In the meantime, we'll prepare your evidence package." He tapped a stack of documents, witness statements from Sarah, Tom, Anna, and James, the audio recording emails to HR, and the termination letter. Maria glanced at the papers, each one a reminder of what had happened. She felt a surge of purpose. She was not just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who faced unfair treatment. After the meeting, Maria stepped out into the cool morning air. The city streets were busy with people hurrying to work. She walked slowly, letting the sounds and sights wash over her. The noise felt less harsh now, like a pulse she could ride. She thought of the day's tasks, gathering more statements, meeting with her friends, practicing her testimony. It would be hard work, but she felt ready. That afternoon, she met Sarah at a quiet coffee shop near the office. They sat at a corner table, mugs in hand. Sarah reached across and squeezed Maria's hand. "I filed my statement this morning," she said. "Anything you need, just tell me." Maria smiled. She was grateful for friends who stood by her. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means so much." Over the next week, Maria and her attorney prepared for the hearing. They practiced her answers to possible questions. She learned to speak clearly and calmly about her experience. Time she rehearsed, her confidence grew. She reminded herself that her truth was strong and that she deserved to be heard. Finally, the hearing day arrived. Maria wore a navy suit and polished shoes. She stepped into the bright hearing room, feeling her heart pound. Mr. Green gave her a reassuring nod. The room held a panel of 3 board members, a representative from her former company, and HR's lawyers. Daniel Harris sat at the company's table, his face unreadable. The hearing began with introductions. Then Mr. Green presented Maria's case. He outlined how Daniel's actions were discriminatory and how the company had failed to protect her. He showed the recording, the statements, and the timeline of events. Maria watched as the board members leaned forward, taking notes. She felt her pulse steady. Her story was told with careful facts. When it was her turn to testify, Maria stood and faced the panel. She spoke slowly, describing her excitement about the party, the shock of being told to leave, the hurt she felt, and the unfair firing. She held her head high and looked each board member in the eye when she answered. She did not let fear or shame enter her voice. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Green thanked her, and she sat down. The company's lawyer questioned Daniel first. He asked why Daniel had asked Maria to leave, and whether he had made any comments about her race. Daniel denied using any slur, and claimed he only felt Maria was being disruptive. Maria watched him, her chest tight, but her face calm. She knew the truth. Next, the company lawyer questioned Maria, trying to show contradictions. But Maria's answers were clear. She explained exactly what happened, how she felt, and how she had returned to speak with Mr. Patel. She even pointed out the moments. In the recording, the panel seemed to take every detail seriously. After both sides finished, the board dismissed everyone and went into private deliberation. Maria sat with Mr. Green in a waiting room, her hands clasped. Sarah and Tom joined her, offering quiet support. The minutes felt long, but eventually a clerk returned and asked everyone to re-enter the hearing room. The board chair cleared his throat. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, we find in favor of Ms. Thompson, he announced. Maria felt her chest soar. The words sounded like music in her ears. The chair continued. The company is ordered to reinstate Ms. Thompson to her previous position, provide back pay for lost wages, and implement training on discrimination for all managers. We also recommend a public apology from the company. To Ms. Thompson, tears sprang into Maria's eyes. She pressed her fingertips to her eyes to hold them back. Sarah let out a soft cry of joy beside her. Mr. Green offered his congratulations. Daniel sat quietly, his face pale. Maria took a steadying breath. She felt a mix of victory and relief. In the days that followed, the company contacted her with the board's decision. They arranged a meeting for her reinstatement and drafted a letter of apology signed by Mr. Patel and the CEO. They also scheduled anti-bias training led by an outside consultant. Maria felt the weight of her fight lift. She was going back to work, but things would be different. On her first day back, she walked through the office doors with a new sense of pride. Colleagues greeted her with smiles and pats on the back. Mr. Patel met her with a warm hug. "We missed you," he said quietly. Maria nodded, feeling the warmth of genuine welcome. She returned to her desk, where a bouquet of flowers and a note from her team awaited her. The note read, "Welcome back, Maria. We're so glad you're here." Maria felt tears again, but these were tears of happiness. In the following weeks, Maria helped organize the required training sessions and even shared part of her story in an anonymous way to help others learn. She saw managers reflect on their own biases and heard colleagues discuss how to make the office more inclusive. Change was slow, but real. Maria felt proud to know her actions had sparked it. One afternoon, Marcus surprised her at the office with lunch. They sat by the window, sunlight dancing on their table. Marcus reached across and took her hand. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "You stood up for yourself and helped make things better for everyone." Maria squeezed his hand and smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, "or without my friends." She thought of Sarah, Tom, Anna, and Miguel, those who supported her. Months later, the company held its next annual celebration. This time, Maria arrived. With a quiet confidence, she wore a festive sweater that didn't blink, but had a bright, cheerful pattern. She entered the banquet hall and was greeted by friendly faces. Mr. Patel took her hand. "Go ahead," he said with a grin. "Enjoy yourself." Maria did. She danced with friends, laughed with her colleagues, and at one point even spun Megan from accounting into a gentle twirl. When she looked around, she saw no scowling manager at the edge of the dance floor. She saw only people who cared. As she raised her glass in a toast, she thought of how far she had come. She remembered the fear and pain of that first night, the shock of wrongful firing, and the long journey to this moment. She felt grateful for her friends, her attorney, and the board members who chose justice. She felt stronger than ever. In her heart, Maria knew she would always carry the memory of that painful night. But she also carried the memory of how she stood tall, spoke up, and helped change things for the better. And as the music played and laughter filled the room, she realized that her courage had lit a path not only for herself, but for everyone who believed in fairness and respect.